Yay.
Hey, everybody, it's your friend Adam. Steve here was the moderator on a debate I had not too long ago. And he wanted to come back and actually talk to me a little bit before more because he was moderating, so he didn't want to get too involved in the discussion, which is amicable. Me, I just jump right in. I just jump in with both feet. You know me as a moderator. I like to make it a little 2-on-1. I'm looking at you, Vosh. But Steve was nice enough to come back, so we're going to talk a little bit. I'm going to let you take the floor, Steve, because you had certain things that you wanted to talk about. I have a document that's my socialism versus capitalism document I've been building on in these debates. So,
I imagine I've seen you've done quite a few of these.
Voss was giving me a hard time because he was like, "Oh, read a book." Like the one problem that I have is there's this book, Why Nations Fail, which I talk about a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just watching your debate with Vosh this morning, actually, and I was like, wow, I should look up this book. So I've been over the Wikipedia summary of the book, at least.
Okay, cool. That's good.
It was very interesting.
So that's my thing. There are strong arguments put forward in that book that go against the socialist Marxist narrative, that if you guys ever want to get some kind of movement off the ground, you have to address those issues. So
yeah, absolutely. And this is kind of where I wanted to come at it from, because there's a lot of different ways of having a political discussion, and I kind of wanted to frame that properly. So I wanted to make sure in the last discussion that we started from similar values. So just to reiterate that, and I think we do, like kind of the starting goal is obviously we want to make the world a better place.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, definitely. More happiness, more success, more resources for more people.
Absolutely. So I phrase it as we're trying to maximize well-being for society from behind the veil of ignorance.
Right.
So that's like the broad goal. Obviously, we all individually also are looking out for ourselves and our loved ones.
Right.
I'm not going to fault anybody for that, certainly.
That's the one problem with that idea, because people have peeked behind the veil or peeked in front of the veil of ignorance, and they know where their station is in life. So they start organizing society that favors them where they're at.
Absolutely.
That is the constant problem of society. We constantly have that going on. And this is what tends us towards corruption. So,
yeah, everyone's looking out for themselves, and the people who have the most power have the most influence to rig it for themselves.
Exactly.
And that's kind of the problem.
Yes.
So just in terms of how to have the conversation, first values, and then we could go straight to which optimal future society would best maximize those values. And then you might think, what is the third thing would be, what is the best way to move toward that optimal future society? Mm-hmm. And then another avenue of discussion is what is the best we can do in current electoral politics?
Right.
Because they're all kind of different.
Well, I'm happy to hear you say that, because
situations.
I know there is a debate on the socialist side whether or not we should just throw away current electoral politics and do it like the old-fashioned in the street way.
Going.
Yeah, exactly. So it sounds like we're both on the same side of that debate. It has to be done within the framework of society. I saw a sigh there, Steve. Like maybe the street is the right angle.
Well, I just had a debate on my channel a little while ago with somebody from the Green Party.
Okay.
So it was basically what's best for the country, Green Party or Bernie Sanders.
Right.
And it was a rather frustrating debate, and she wouldn't budge an inch. And at the very end of the debate, it came out that she's actually in the Green Party as like part of the party structure, and she's going to be running under the Green Party eventually.
Right. Gotcha.
So I was like, well, no wonder you weren't flexing on anything. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, she's preaching her politics already.
Yeah, I mean, it's very, once you get outside of electoral politics, then you've basically given up on politics, from my view. Like,
yeah,
unfortunately, this is a two-party system. So if you leave the two-party system, you've given up on politics. You're just basically LARPing around in the Green Party, unfortunately, or the Libertarian Party or whatever. It's just, you're not doing anything. And if you're not going to vote anyway because you hate the two parties so much, then cool, go ahead and do that.
So
but you're not really making an impact on the world.
Yeah. So you sound like a bit of a pragmatist then. So you
absolutely.
think we have
very pragmatic.
Okay, good. So we agree. We're both pragmatists. We both want to work within the system that we have and change it where we can. I think we might have talked a bit about this. I'm supporting Andrew Yang because I believe that automation is the biggest problem facing us as a society, and that sooner or later we will have to implement some form of universal basic income to avoid
need to implement something. Yeah, for sure.
To avoid a large segment of society being just like out of the job market completely because they don't have the kind of skills that the job market will require in this future society.
Right. And that's why I'm so glad Yang is running for president. Like, I honestly am. Like, I don't like most of his policies. He's probably not even in my top 2 or 3.
Right. Bernie's your guy, I think.
Bernie's my guy, and there's not even a close second at this point.
Right. Okay. Not Elizabeth Warren, not Pocahontas. What's going on?
We're not talking about Warren today. She probably has borrowed some of Hillary Clinton's advisors here because she's doing the same kind of calculating DNC garbage that kind of turns a lot of us off.
Totally.
So, I think if Warren was to win, just to be clear that I'm not like dissing her too hard here, if she was to win, I think she'd be the best president we've had in modern history.
Mm-hmm. Warren?
I just think we can do a lot better.
Finally, let's box. We disagree. We'll let this one pass, but I was worried that we were going to agree too much here. But Warren,
I said I'm glad Yang's running. For 2 reasons. For one, he's not another establishment candidate.
Exactly.
Having anybody from the outside is a good thing. Like, let's get some other perspectives. Let's switch up the conversation a little bit. And the second reason is just what you said. He's talking about a very important issue, and that's automation. And automation is basically going to make the problems in our country worse. Why is that? Now, think about that. Why is automation going to make things work? It's making us more efficient. It's producing more. It should be making things better for everybody. So why is it making it worse? And I would have to say it's because there's a very small subset of people who own the means of production, including automation.
Yes.
If society owned automation, it would make all of our lives better.
Yes. And that's the idea. This is why I didn't understand Vaush's perspective, because I did a debate with Vaush and I said, like, he's talking about seizing the means of production, yet he's against Andrew Yang and UBI. And I thought, well, what do you think Andrew Yang and UBI are talking about? If you're taking money from Amazon and you're giving it to every American citizen, how is that not seizing the means of production?
Right. And that's a good question. It's something we can talk about, but to frame that a little bit better, like you, I see this channel, like in the description, it says truth wins, and my channel is Rivera. It means truth matters. Like, we have a similar kind of brand. I care about truth. I care about critical thinking. I care about logic. And I think one of the principles of critical thinking that isn't discussed very much necessarily outside of certain academic spaces is that you can never really talk about one thing.
Yeah.
You need to compare it to something else.
Yeah.
Like, if I come to you and you've never heard of the conspiracy that we faked the moon landings, this happened to me. I was like 20 years old, never heard anybody even suggest that. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm hanging out with 3 people, and all 3 of the people like, oh, what, you think we landed on the moon? And it just like came out of left field, and they had all these very interesting arguments that I'd never heard. And if you only hear the one side, it can seem rational. That's why people become flat earthers, young earthers, all this other kind of crazy stuff. If you only hear one side, it can be. So in a similar way, if we made this whole conversation about Bernie or this whole conversation about Yang, I could sit here and criticize him all day. That doesn't make him not the best candidate.
Right.
I mean, he can still be the best candidate even if there's valid criticisms of him.
Yeah, obviously.
So that's why we need the comparison.
Yeah, you should be able to criticize the candidates. But you're never going to have, like, someone in the chat right now is saying that Andrew Yang is a gun-grabbing commie. I'm not in favor of limiting our Second Amendment rights. We probably disagree there. Okay, so God, we agree on that.
Hey, one of my debates in my playlist is me versus a liberal who wants to ban all guns.
Yeah. The
and I'm on the pro Second Amendment side.
The thing that bugs the thing that bugs the hell out of me is that the liberals are supposed to be the ones standing up for the dispossessed, and it's the dispossessed that all those expensive gun permits that they want to roll out hurt. Like, it's the guy that's living in the hood that the cops don't show up for 2 hours that needs the gun, and you're going to make it cost him $1,000 to get a permit for a gun?
Right. There's a lot of I'm all for empirically validated gun control that's demonstrated to improve society, make it safer while not hurting liberties unnecessarily.
Yeah.
So I think a perfect example of that is the universal background bill. This is something 90% of the country wants. Right now, there's literally zero gun control in the United States because anybody with a little gas money can drive to a red state like Idaho and just buy it in the classifieds.
Yeah.
Like I visit my folks in Idaho. They have guns in the classifieds. You just go there, pay them cash. You have a gun. So if I'm some gun, gangbanger in a city or, criminal anywhere, and I have a record and all this, there's not even really a black market because you just drive over and get a gun.
Exactly.
So all the gun regulations are entirely irrelevant.
Yes.
So whatever California passes, whether it's magazine bans, which are also dumb, I disagree with them, or anything else, it doesn't matter because you can just drive.
Yeah. You're keeping guns out of the hands of law-abiding citizens.
Yeah.
And
when you have a loophole, you can drive a truck through.
Yeah.
Nothing else matters.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's good. I'm glad you're a pragmatist. I'm glad you're an ideas guy. Let's move back to the I guess the socialist debate. Like, I'm even willing. I'm interested in Andrew Yang and I'm interested in UBI. A lot of people give me a hard time. A lot of people think that it will cause inflation. I don't know if they're correct. I don't know if it will cause inflation. I don't know if you would implement some UBI type thing and then 2 years down the line, everything is just more expensive and it's like the UBI doesn't even exist. So I think those arguments have some merit to it. But in society, as you said, there are so many factors that you don't really know the outcome until you implement some policy. I often mention prohibition because prohibition is a perfect example of this. Like, they thought making alcohol illegal would make society better and ended up making it worse. And they actually had to dial it back because of unintended consequences. So society is kind of this, move forward in little ways. The automation, I mean, we're going down that road now. I don't see how we can stop it.
To clarify my position, with a label, I'm what you would call a libertarian market socialist.
Okay.
So I want to maximize individual liberty.
Right.
I think markets and competition are a good thing.
Okay, good.
When they're a good thing. And I think that the people should own the means of production in general.
So how does that?
So none of those things contradict with each other.
Yeah, they seem like hugely contradictory. So let's dig in a bit because how? I mean, so are you advocating for the worker co-ops thing?
Yes, and it's a lot of the criticisms I feel come from one of two places. It's either my kind of point 3, which is how do you transition to that, or it's from you're disagreeing that would be an optimal society, and you have concerns about I think primarily innovation, because what's the incentive for me to go out and start a business if as soon as I hire somebody he owns half the company?
That's one. Yeah, I don't know that business formation is going to happen, and also two is that it introduces this massive inefficiency into the business that I don't know that you can get around. There are certain points in a business where you need to make decisions that will inevitably hurt members of the employment. And those members are never going to make the decision that's going to hurt them. Therefore, the business really can't compete against other businesses where that's going to be a reality.
Right. And that's something to be discussed. Can I get an audio check and chat? I'm hearing you sounding a little bit robot-y sometimes.
Oh, really?
So I don't know if I'm coming across like that. I don't know how the quality of the call is, but just wanted to see if anyone else is having that issue. But I can understand you.
Sounds perfect. Sounds perfect on my end. If you want to reset, we can. You sound great on my end too. So I don't know if you want to leave it. If you want to leave the call.
No, I'm good. I just wanted to make sure everyone's good.
Yeah.
So I think that a lot of the concerns with socialism are solved with a sliding scale system of how the ownership transfers to the people.
Okay.
Because at issue here, we want innovation, and to get that innovation, we need incentive. We need incentive for people to risk their time and their energy and resources to start a business.
Right.
But there's a lot of research. I mean, you can Google it, but I have a couple articles here if you wanted to see it. There's one from economicshelp.org, Diminishing Marginal Utility of Income and Wealth. Wealth becomes less and less an incentive the more and more it is. I mean, this is pretty obvious. If you make $0 and I give you $100 a week, that's going to change your life. If you make $10,000 a week and I give you $100, it does almost nothing. So in the studies, they show that up to about $150,000 a year-ish is improving your life. It's great. And then you have diminishing returns after that. By the time you get to billionaires, they are not improving their standard of life whatsoever. Like nothing, like anything past 900 million isn't making your life better. It's not like owning a sixth yacht or whatever isn't really help making your life better. At that point, it's just pure power. So to me, that's the biggest problem with the current model, which I think you agree with from this Why Nations Fail, and the idea of you want to broaden the people's ability to have power in a country. And when you have a handful of people that own everything, of a handful of billionaires that control everything, that's kind of one of the problems we're trying to solve in society.
The problem that I have with the study, and I do believe you in that after a certain point of wealth, you're not tangibly better off. And I think the research bears that out. But I don't actually think people believe that research, and that affects their motivation. Power is really the goal for people. People want to be the next Donald Trump. They want to be on the top of the stack. So if you take that out, you still have the problem of the incentive. Like we can sit here and talk about how we could tell society you'll be just fine. You don't need to be Donald Trump.
I don't think we should be giving out power as an economic incentive, though. That's kind of wild. Like where do you draw the line? This is a
no. I maybe we're miscommunicating here, because I'm just saying power in that, like the billionaire status, like the top of the top dog in the status hierarchy is what people are after. You're talking about eliminating that top dog situation where the most
Absolutely.
people, yeah. So that,
let's actually put a pin in this, because this is a huge issue. But I was outlining kind of my version of what I'm talking about.
But you take those you do take those incentives off the table if you're structuring a society. Like there's another book that I was reading.
Well, I want people to be able to be incredibly wealthy. Like let me make that clear. I just don't think we need billionaires. Right. So if somebody creates a very effective business and they earn $100 million, that's great. Good for them.
Okay.
If they making $100 billion, now we have a freaking problem, because that's a tremendous amount of power. They're basically a freaking pharaoh.
Right.
Like they're a king. They can buy media outlets and sway elections.
Yeah.
And so that's the problem. So what I'm suggesting here in libertarian market socialism is a system wherein if I start a business, it's my business until it reaches a certain point. Just to be arbitrary, I'm not an economics professor, so I haven't, numbers can move. But in general, the idea, let's say it reaches $100,000 in profit a year. Mm-hmm. At that point,
that's nothing. Peanuts.
At that point, 10% of it goes to the employees. Just 10%. No biggie.
No, I'm not doing it.
That's
Screw
okay.
This.
Call it
Too much work.
$500,000, 10% goes to the workers.
10 million.
Well, it's a sliding scale though. So it starts
10
at just
billion in sales.
I'm not saying you only own 10%. I'm saying you give away 10% of the company. So you still own 90% of your company.
Like, these guys are starting businesses and they're selling, like they sold Facebook for $500 million. Like you're $100,000 in profit is nothing.
Scale
That's like tiny.
You start off with just a portion of the company, and as the company grows, that portion grows wider and wider. So by the time the business is making, say, $1 billion a year in profit, now it's owned 90% by the people. Yeah, so the owner still has $100 million dollars a year. It's a tremendous amount of money.
That's not even
That's
worth
a tremendous
me
amount of incentive.
Not even worth me getting out of bed for. You're talking about restructure. Seriously, this is the way that I look at it from the common man's perspective, and you're really trying to motivate the common man to build, to innovate.
Right.
I'm looking
Absolutely.
at you're proposing. You're saying, the lottery, this winning, $10 million. That's ridiculous. Nobody needs $10 million. Let's make the max you can win in the lottery $100,000. That's
not what I'm doing. I'm making it so the system isn't going to make it very difficult to become worth over $1 billion. So don't change the numbers. There are Powerballs that you can win $1 billion in.
Right.
So but a ton of people are still buying lottery tickets that have a max payout.
But you're
5,000,
saying
$1 million.
You're saying once I hit the billion mark, though, 90% of my company is going to be owned by someone else. Like that doesn't make me a billionaire. That makes them a billionaire.
What makes you work? What gives you the right to own other people's labor? I'm a libertarian. I think we should own our own labor in a perfect world.
They don't. I don't own other people's labor. I'm buying other people's labor from them. They own their labor. That's the libertarian outlook.
Right, but it's not. You don't really have a choice in a capitalist society. Well, you have to sell your labor to live.
Well, you have a choice who you sell it to, though.
Yeah, but there's only so many people, and they're only paying so much. And the system's such that 1% of the country owns 40% of the wealth.
Yeah. No,
and the top 0.1% is even more grossly disproportionate.
Why? So I agree with you. I agree with you. I don't understand why we can't deal with it with progressive taxation. Why we have to monkey around with the business formation system.
Well, again, to be clear, this was in what I would call a optimal future society. Mm-hmm. So this isn't something obviously Bernie Sanders is running on. This is something, if we're talking about how we see the future in an optimal way, that's why I put forth that. So I'm just trying to demonstrate a model of socialism that solves your concerns, and I think that does to a large degree.
I disagree, but
you might quibble over how much incentives needed, but I think you can agree it is better than where you hire one person, they own 50% of your company.
It is better, but the $100,000 mark is just, that's.
Well, like I said, the beginning point and the end point of a sliding scale, that's debatable. You can set those different places. It's the principle that I was trying to convey there.
Yeah. Well, the whole thing is.
So what would your optimal future society look like? Like, what do you think the big problems are, and how would you suggest solving them? Because you brought up rent seeking last time, and that's depending on how there's two definitions for rent seeking. Basically, one is where it's like literally like rent, like I own a house, I'm renting it, I'm not producing anything, but I'm raking in all this money.
Yeah, rent seeking.
There's a lot of things like that, but there's also rent seeking which is rich people rigging the economy in their favor by buying politicians. That's also an aspect of rent seeking.
Yeah, all that is bad.
That. You're just talking about all that.
I'm talking about, and also like financial, like there's a lot of like, what is it called? When you're just buying and selling stocks, you're not adding value. I forget what it's actually called, but that's
all these day traders. Absolutely.
That's a form of rent seeking. They're not actually producing any tangible good for the economy. When you buy something in one place and at a low price and sell it in another place at a higher price, you're a financial guy, right? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is that called? I forget the name of it. There's a specific
commodities trading.
Yeah, but it's where you're taking advantage of a discrepancy in the market where you can buy in one place and.
Well, I don't think you're talking about any one vocation because there's a freaking lot of it.
Yeah, totally.
The word for that is Wall Street.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah. I'm specifically focused on the business formation, the innovation, and I think that the socialists a lot of times delude themselves into thinking that people are a certain way that they can implement their programs and people are not going to rebel. What you're saying may work for 10% of the population, 20% of the population. I'll even give you, let's say it works for 50% of the population. There's still going to be a 50% of the population that is saying, well, if I can't become a gazillionaire, then it's not worth me participating. And I would argue that those are probably they're the most money-focused people. They're probably the ones that are going to be your Jeff Bezos and your Elon Musk and your.
I don't think so, because I think most people just want to better their situation.
Right.
We don't need to be able to be Jeff Bezos. We just want to be better.
But we need Jeff Bezos.
Let's talk about how bad Well, I disagree, but let's talk about inequality. So just to phrase how bad this is, I don't think most people are aware of this. If we divided all of the wealth in America equally between households, what do you think that would be? You have any idea?
Yeah, I think it's like $400,000 per household. I think it's like I did the math on this at one time, but it was quite some time ago.
Yeah, well, what I saw that was from 2017, which it always takes a couple years for these kind of deep studies to come out, so it's always a little bit out of date. But if divided equally among all of the U.S. households, that'd be $760,000 per family.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying that's what we should do.
It's a 4-person family, though, right? It's per 4 people.
Well, it's an average household.
Right.
Like there's 124 million households.
Right.
So some of them are 4, some of them are 18, and some of them are 1. So
if you break down when I did it, it was if you break down the national GDP by every American citizen, it was about $100,000 a year per person. So your numbers are, if it's a family of 4 and 700,000, that's a bit more.
Yeah, I'm talking about wealth here. But think about it. I mean, obviously we can't have a world where everyone's completely equal. I'm not advocating for that. We need some incentive, certainly. But imagine a world where everybody could own a house or condo. So it's a couple $100,000 worth. Everybody has a little bit of wealth. I think that'd be pretty cool. I think everybody's life would be better. But right now, the bottom 50% of families average $11,000 in net worth. They're not even getting a fraction of that. That's how gross the disparity is. I'd highly recommend people just go to Wikipedia and go to wealth inequality in the United States. There's a lot of really impressive graphics there that break down the problem.
So two things. All that wealth that you're divvying up is wealth that's created by your super innovators, your Jeff Bezos, your Elon Musks. I see. I'm already triggering you a little bit. I can see, but you're talking. You've said something that offends my sensibilities here, because Jeff Bezos, like, you got to admit, Amazon. The reason we're having a conversation about automation is because of Amazon. The reason we're electric, like the person pushing electric cars into the marketplace, is Elon Musk. So you're saying two of the most productive innovators in our current society we don't need, which just screams like.
I'm saying we need them because, sure, like, if they're innovators, if they're bringing this forward, that's awesome. Jeff Bezos he can be the guy who's worth $999 million at the top of the pile.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't need him to be our freaking king. Like, he doesn't need political power. He doesn't need to own Washington Post. He doesn't need to own towns. Like there's a South Park. I didn't watch it, but apparently I saw a clip of it where it's showing how you can live and everything you do is touched by Amazon. Your entertainment, everything you get, your food, you're working for Amazon. It's basically a company town. At what point do we say that's a problem? Like when all other businesses are out of business and the entire country is owned by Amazon, it might be a little late to object at that point.
Yeah, no, that's the problem that we're both discussing here. But I mean, there is an argument to be made that the only reason they want anything to do with politics is to get the politicians out of their way as innovators. The only reason they want anything to do with politics is to get the government out of their way as innovators, because the government stands in there. Well, like, listen, you're talking about kneecapping Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk at $100 million? Is that what you said?
I'm not kneecapping them. I'm letting the people who are helping them build this empire that they rely on, that are contributing to this innovation,
right,
get the fruits of their labor.
Okay.
Like, they can still be very wealthy,
So
but
I
the
have
people
my
working
pie.
in it should be getting their share of ownership.
Because that's just your gut intuition. That's not necessarily.
No, because we're trying to make the world better for everybody. And the world isn't going to be better for everybody when like 3 people own more than the bottom half the country.
It depends upon what those 3 people want
Part
to do.
of making the world better is feeling represented. Half the country doesn't vote because they don't feel represented in our country, because they aren't. The U.S. is an oligarchy. You can Google it. There's been studies on this.
I would argue
the rich
that they
people
don't
have
vote.
far more influence than anybody else.
I would argue that they don't vote because things are okay for them. Like, if things were worse, I think they would take a chance on voting. They're saying, everything's okay. It's too much work for me to go to the polls and vote. But I want to touch on this Jeff Bezos thing.
And yet, over a third of the country, almost half the country, can't afford a $500 bill. 2/3 of the country live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
The fact that you think half the country are so happy with everything,
but
I think they're too busy working 3 jobs.
You're willing, but this is like a real Sophie's Choice type situation, Steve, because you're willing. I see a future where we travel to Mars and we double our lifespan. Okay.
Sure.
And you're saying, no, it's more important that we give these people Jeff Bezos money than Jeff Bezos working on doubling the human lifespan. So is that a good bet?
Well, because this is a kind of an absurd idea. I think.
Why is it absurd? How much money
can
does
do
it
everything.
cost? How much money does it cost to
These people
double
can do
the human
everything they
lifespan?
want. These people, they're not. These people are not going to spend that kind of money to make the life better for us.
Well,
you look at much of the
Jeff Bezos doesn't want to double his lifespan. You don't think Jeff Bezos wants to? You don't think that tangibly affects him?
Yeah, but everybody wants to, and we all have a lot more clout put together. That's the kind of program a government can research. A lot of our drugs were developed by the government. Our internet and satellite program were developed by the government. Like, the government can do broad scale innovation with a long-term view. And in fact, they're better at it than the market. Market's looking for a short-term profit. Long-term vision projects have typically been left to the government because they're better at it. They don't need a profit this quarter.
The only reason the government went to the moon or Mars was because we were scared the Russians were going to get the high ground. If there's not an external force driving government to spend that money on certain things, they won't do it.
Right. So we should be the external force driving them to do it.
But you can't getting me and my wife to agree on where we're going to go to dinner is hard enough. You can't get 300 million Americans to agree on we should work to double the human lifespan. We should work to go to Mars. That's what I'm saying.
You don't think so? I think we all want to have a better lifespan. No. Our life expectancy has been going down for the last 3 years. I think that's a concern for everybody.
Let's get to the root of the argument that I'm trying to make here.
Okay.
I'm saying that you're kneecapping Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, the people who I'm just throwing out doubling the human lifespan because it's something I think everybody could say that's something that would be cool.
I mean, you're looking at 2 people who you think have done some good work, but let's look at the fact that the outsized influence of the top 0.0%, 0.01% of the population is what's causing climate change.
Well, climate change is let's focus solely on this argument that I'm making.
Well,
Jeff Bezos gets an idea.
Big issues. I'm talking about big issues. Climate change is a big issue, and it's caused by this influence. They're the ones preventing change. They're the ones who knew that the climate was changing because of carbon in the freaking 70s, and they've been funding think tanks and pundits and Fox News to try to keep us from doing anything about it. It's that outsized influence that is threatening our existence, basically.
I see your super chat's a very dead horse, and I will get to them in just a minute. But I want to zero in on this argument because the climate change feels a little whataboutism, and that really triggers me. Like I want to focus in on this argument. Jeff Bezos gets an idea in his head. He says, I want to triple the human lifespan. I want the average mortality rate for human beings to be 300 years old. Okay. That is my goal. How many resources would it take to do that? And in your system, is that even plausible? Because you're setting up a system where Jeff Bezos, nobody can have enough resources to set about this goal. Now, I realize that you're saying, oh, the government can do that. That could be something that the government
Absolutely.
decides to do. But I just, that flies in the face of our current atmosphere, where it is the Jeff Bezos.
The oligarchs are stopping us from doing anything that benefits the majority of people. I mean, it's that influence that stops it. Just because one or two of them have good goals or pretend to, depending on who you ask.
Who's trying to stop? From where I sit, it looks like you're trying to stop Elon Musk from like changing the entire electrification system of the U.S. and going completely to electric cars. It looks like you're trying to stop him because you're saying he can't have enough resources to dream that big.
You are the one that's saying that we should trust basically a monarchy of rich people, an oligarchy.
I'm not saying
with
that.
all this power. Well, you're arguing that Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk are better trusted with this power than the people are.
Well, the people
seems to be your argument.
The people are a check on them. In the current situation, if Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos decided that they wanted to use their massive resources to basically eliminate people or to create some product that would be detrimental to society, if they decided they were going to work on some kind of weapon or something like that, like a doomsday weapon, I think the government would step in and the population would step in, rightly so. But I'm talking about things that would be super beneficial for society, but in your system are not even, you're not even able to dream of them because you're not giving individuals the resources to pursue those goals.
I don't think we need to give individuals power with absolutely no accountability and hope they do beneficial things with it.
Yeah, me neither.
We, the people, can do the same thing.
But
like we, the people, can make life better for all of us.
How?
We, the people, can go to Mars. We, the people, can do all this stuff.
How?
Like, the same way we've done the internet and satellites and gone to the moon. It's not difficult. I don't even understand. Like the amount of money even Jeff Bezos can spend on increasing the lifespan is a freaking drop in the bucket compared to the government's budget.
Right. How? But the government doesn't, like the government turned over space travel to Elon Musk because they said, we can't get this done. Because of the
influence of oligarchs that are always trying to privatize everything.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't know that we're going to agree on this. I'll read some super chats. I don't want to cut you off though. I'll let you finish your thought.
Well, innovation is like I said, long-term innovation can be done by the people. Short-term innovation and creative destruction is why you need a market economy in certain industries. There's certainly industries where there's not competition, in which case you might as well have a government monopoly on it. But in a lot of situations, a market economy is better. But I mean, would you agree that the main benefit of a market is the competition and creative destruction?
Yeah.
And if you don't have that in an industry, what benefit is a private monopoly?
Well, you're avoiding creative destruction in that you're setting up a system where you're giving individuals the power to short circuit that system. Because if you have a company,
not at all.
Well, how so? I mean, if you have 100 workers in a company and they need to downsize or change in any radical way, those 100 people all have a vote in whether or not that's going to happen. And they're obviously not going to vote that they get fired.
They're going to want the company to be best for them. And
for
since
them, exactly.
Right. And since you and I both agreed that we want to make the world better for everybody, that's a good goal. If it decreases efficiency by a couple percent, I'm okay with it because automation is going to more than make up for that.
The company
we have a future that can be amazing with automation because of how much it can produce. Losing a couple percent in efficiency is not that big a deal. There's still creative destruction because there's a market. So if I have a company and it's creating a product and we don't want to change things and we don't want to change or whatever, another company can come along, and take us over, just like in the current system. There's still a market. You can still go out of business. You can still start a new business.
If you have a company with 100 employees and the better company is with some new technology and 50 employees, you are never going to get that 100 employees to vote for that because they don't know which 50 of them are going to lose their jobs. So you can't have the better company. It's impossible.
These are two separate companies. What are you talking about? Competition is between the two companies.
Right. So companies are not allowed. Then a company will not be able to change. It will have to die. And a new company will have to be started. How is that more efficient?
Well, because it's not going to happen very often. Like
this happens.
We
all
can
the
look
time.
at reality. There's plenty of unions. There's plenty of worker co-ops, and they do pretty well, actually. There's fringe examples of them not doing well. But in general, like if a company, you can show the math, you can show the accounting, and the business in these negotiations with unions, this already happened. It's like, we need to do this because otherwise we're going to have to do this. We already have these conversations. We already have a system in place. You're treating it like it's a scary hypothetical when it's already been done.
How you have a company with 100 employees, okay? And that company makes widgets. They can make just as many widgets with 50 employees and technology X. Are those 100 employees ever going to vote to buy technology X and fire half of them?
Well, if they're keeping their stock ownership in the company, then sure, why not? Like, if you're making the company more productive and you get to keep your stock benefits, cool, let's be more productive. That's what I mean. Like, let's own the means of production. Then we all benefit from the automation.
Yeah, I think. So what are those 50 employees that lose their job? Are you saying they're still going to be part owners in the company? They're just no longer going to work at the company?
Yeah. In fact, that's another way I've thought about transitioning to a social state. Like, what about a world where instead of the model I produced earlier, what about a model where every time you introduce automation into an industry, the amount of people that are displaced is the amount of the percentage of the company that reverts as ownership to the people, something more along that line, because that is the problem. Like, the automation is the ultimate problem. And if we, the people, can own that automation, then it's going to benefit all of us. If it doesn't, you can eventually have a dystopia where you have billionaires in the walled off sections of the country that's a paradise, and the rest of us are living this Mad Max apocalypse outside. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have automated sentries and drones defending their zone, and we're all out here in the desert trying to survive.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I'm a believer in UBI, I know it drives people crazy, but all right,
well, let's get off the hypothetical and get more into the Bernie and Yang.
Well,
and the UBI
let's read some super chats because people might have some questions for us. A Very Dead Horse for $4.99 says, "This guy's numbers are so arbitrary. He's not a libertarian. Billionaires can be millionaires in the fluctuations of stock markets. Millionaires can go broke." So I'll let you respond. He's saying that you're not a libertarian, which is a question that I have as well. Like, why where does the libertarianism come in?
Well, because I want to maximize freedom within society. So, for instance, anything that infringes on our personal liberties has to do some serious justification in order to do that. So, for instance, should we legalize all drugs? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Should we?
Well, I'm for that.
Guns?
We agree there.
With minimum regulation? Absolutely. Should abortion be legal? Sure. Like I think unless you can demonstrate significant harm, then we should default to liberty. And that's part of why socialism is, because it gives you more liberty when you own part of where you work. You have a democratic workplace is in maximizing liberty within society.
But you're taking away the liberty of the person that started that business,
person,
though.
The owner,
right?
It sacrifices
You're
some
still
liberty.
You're still taking.
But 99% are gaining the fruits of their own labor.
Right.
So in libertarian philosophy, like, we realize you can't have perfect liberty.
Right.
There's always somebody who's stopped. So like the common analogy is your freedom to swing your arms ends where my nose begins. Right. Well, my labor is where my nose begins. It's mine. It's what I do.
Yeah, but that's what you're selling. to me, who's buying it at a certain...
In a capitalist model, but
Yeah.
why does it have to be like that?
So how
in a capitalist
in
model,
your
you
model,
can wait. Just
how does it work?
The
in
big
your model?
problem with capitalism is it allows a situation where very few people have power. They can buy politicians. Like this is to me the biggest problem in capitalism is the fact that we're an oligarchy and this influence. So maybe we wanted to dip into that field a little bit more. Think about it. I've had people make the argument that, well, like a billionaire only has so much money compared to the entire US population. But think about how much more free money they have. Like the bottom 90% of the country, if we want to donate to a politician, if I donate $100 to Bernie Sanders, like that's $100 I can't do something else with. But to a billionaire, they can drop 50 million and it doesn't even affect them at all.
Yeah.
They can drop hundreds of millions. And it's that since they have so much more disposable income, that's what gives them the massive power. They can buy media outlets. They can do massive donations to politicians. They get to be in the ear of a politician. Like you and me, we don't get to sit around talking to congressmen and selling them on what we want them to do. But they do. They go to the cocktail parties with them.
How does... I mean, you're limiting someone's liberty in a huge way. I guess we're just never going to agree on that.
2,200 billionaires in exchange for 8 billion people.
I know, but by this argument, I mean, slavery is obviously an extreme condition, but by this argument, we can justify slavery as long as we keep the slaves to a minimum.
No, not at all. A billionaire is not hurt by this.
Well, they are.
Hundreds of millions of dollars.
Hold on. I have
lifestyle.
I have my you're comparing
this
apples.
is like arguing for monarchy because the king.
No, you're comparing apples and oranges. No, I'm not arguing for monarchy. You're comparing apples and oranges here. You're saying that I can live the life of luxury. I'm not looking to live the life of luxury, man. I'm going to sleep on the floor because I want to triple the human lifespan, okay? And in order to do that, I need resources. You're saying, no, you're fine. Just go stay at the...
And that's your one ideal billionaire versus all of the top 0.1% that is killing the planet through climate change. That's why that's relevant. Just because one guy of the billionaires is decent and most of them are killing the planet, like this shows that we can't trust that. That's not this is like arguing for monarchy because there's this one good king and he wants to do good stuff. Well, what about his son?
It's not how am I
through history, and there's a lot of
monarchy.
bad kings. You're arguing for individual billionaires that are worth hundreds of billions of dollars.
That has a state keeping them in check. The monarch had nothing keeping him in check. The monarch woke up in the morning and said, "Everybody's property is mine. Let me
and the
do with it whatever I want."
It and still controls a lot of people's lives.
Even if Bill Gates comes to you and says, "I love this house. I want to buy it," and you say, "I'm not selling. I won't sell it for $100 gazillion." You can still say that.
Right. And this is a perfect example because the problem with wealth inequality
you can't say that with the monarch.
It's power.
You can't say that with the monarch.
Like,
the monarch
where do you draw the line, though? Where do you draw the line with wealth and with ownership? Because right now, 1% owns 40% of the country. Are you okay with a world where 100 people owns 90% of everything? All the land mass, the factories, the means of production, the stocks, the businesses. 100 people owns 90% of everything. Are you okay with that?
I don't.
That's where we're trending.
I think income inequality is a huge problem, but I think
I'm talking about wealth inequality.
Yeah, well, I think wealth inequality is a huge problem, but we want to be careful that we're not killing the goose that laid the golden egg, because there are people working on things now that will benefit human society as a whole. I want to double back to the labor thing before we get too far away from it, because I'm really confused by what you're saying. Like, I conceptualize labor as I own my own labor. When I work, I exchange my labor for money. You're saying that I'm exchanging my labor for a share of the business, or there's no money that I get? What exactly is going on here?
Well, for a share of the business, yeah. So now you have ownership. You can vote and have some influence in where you work.
Right.
The people own it. They have voice. They vote. And obviously with that, you also get a share of the profits, which is important. So you do have, the money as well, obviously.
How is this different than just stock options to buy? Because there might be people who don't want to own the business.
Well, you can debate the particulars, like of whether it's opt-in or not. I personally, I don't. Yeah, we don't need to get into that kind of stuff. It's just I want a world where the people own where they work and they have more say in where they work.
Don't we have an opt-in situation now?
For some publicly traded companies, the problem is when 2/3 of the country lives paycheck to paycheck, they can't really buy stocks, like for the most part.
Right, but like we're talking about
this is why wealth inequality is a trend that tends to go in one direction. Think about it. If you invest your money pretty safely, how hard is it to have it grow faster than the rate of inflation?
Well, I don't know.
It's not very hard.
I invest my money in weed. Are you kidding me? I keep it under the bed.
Hey, you and me both, brother. not right now. I just got off of work. But no.
I'll move on to a super chat. Without Elon Musk making bukus of money on PayPal, there would be no SpaceX, then Tesla, then Boring Company, and whatever comes next. Then competitors to those. And that's my argument. That's totally my argument.
Do you know how one billionaire compared to the 2,200 of them that are killing us?
I conceptualize society as kind of a human resources development project where we're out there looking for the Elon Musk and the Jeff Bezos and the super innovators. And you're basically saying, oh, we don't need those guys, and let's take away any incentive for those guys to get going. I realize that when you're developing an Elon Musk, you're
that's
developing
a straw man, sir, and I know you're in favor of steel man.
Well, give me the steel man of your argument then.
Well, you just said I'm withdrawing any incentive. I think $900 million is plenty of incentive.
Yeah, but you can't go to Mars on $900 million.
Right, and we don't need individual monarchs to come along and save humanity.
I can't triple the human lifespan with $900 million. You were taking that off the table.
Yeah, and most of these billionaires aren't making life better for us with their money. You're talking about one or two people that have pet projects.
I give you that.
That have some money, but most of them are killing us, and their influence in the government is killing us.
You got to take the good with the bad.
Preventing. So we should just give up on climate change?
I think climate change is, ironically, I think climate change is going to be solved by one of these guys that wants to make $1 gazillion.
How are they going to make $1 gazillion?
They are working on they have patents on an artificial tree now that actually takes carbon directly out of the atmosphere and stores
it. Right. Thank you for saying this. Oh my God, this is such a perfect example of how capitalism is not going to fucking solve this problem. I should have asked if I can cuss in this.
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay, because there's a lot of grants being given in the name of climate change to research how to get carbon out of the air.
Right.
And this is a tremendous waste of money because nothing we make is ever going to be more efficient than like algae. We have these molecular machines that are incredibly efficient at pulling carbon out.
Well, they have patents on those trees too.
We have algae. Like, we don't need to be creating artificial trees. There's a lot of gut money that's being created through this rent-seeking behavior and grants toward it. That's basically just wasting money because, like, a lot of Elon Musk's projects have been debunked by Thunderfoot, for instance, like the Hyperloop. Like, but there's a good argument to be made that his whole brand is basically a lie to rip off government grant money. Like,
who? Elon Musk?
Yes.
How dare you talk bad about Elon Musk? How dare you? I should have worn my Elon Musk shirt. I have the shirt of Elon Musk smoking the fatty.
Not saying everything he's done is bad, but if you want to transition to a country where electric cars are the norm, it's not by letting Elon Musk do his things. You know how rare Teslas are to see on the road?
Do you know how
the way you do it is by a carbon tax, so that it's now we have a market incentive.
More government. Where's the libertarian? I have no idea.
I'm sorry. We're talking about maximizing well-being in society.
More government.
If the temperature goes up another couple degrees, that's hurting all of us.
Do you know Elon Musk has all of the patents on the electric like battery technology for cars, and that he's allowed General Motors and all other car manufacturers to use those patents for absolutely free?
Well, that's awesome. That's great for him. The patent, the patent system's a whole other problem we could talk
Right,
about.
but I mean, you're talking about a guy who, like, there's no reason why he had to do
Elon
that.
Musk is a great guy. Some people, maybe not Elon Musk, I haven't studied this issue, I don't particularly care, are abusing the system. And you just watch like Thunderfoot or these other science debunkers, and there's always these products that come out that are promising to take carbon out of the air, or there's the solar frickin' roadways. I don't know if you've seen the memes. These ideas are stupid, and they're getting a lot of money. We need ideas. We need more significant government funding that's held accountable in a scientific way. Like, you need to justify your concept in advance. That's not what's happening right now. We have a rent-seeking behavior where, depending on who you know and who you blow, you can get a huge grant to pretend to do stuff with.
Sorry, I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at Contrast's super chat. Hugo Glaze 56 for 20 MX says, this guy talks of power and wants government. I know that's my... You conceptualize the government as being we the people, and I do to a certain extent, but I mean, I'm nervous our government is on the brink of collapse with what's going on now. So I'm a little nervous there. Yes,
absolutely. The government is a huge, like, for some reason I've noticed you're I don't know if you want to comment on that, but your audience seems to lean a lot farther right than you. I think most of them disagree with you. I think you have more Trump supporters.
My audience is enlightened centrists, all of them.
Okay, enlightened centrists, every single one of them.
I have a lot of Jordan Peterson fans, but Jordan Peterson is not, like, if you really understand Jordan Peterson is not far right at all. So anyway, contrast for 2 Aussie bucks says, which is a better, the Watchmen ending or comic or movie? Do you have a...
I have not finished watching the Watchmen series, and I have not read the comic.
It's not the new one.
Don't spoil it.
It's not the new one. It's the Zack Snyder movie. So we think the Zack Snyder movie ending is better than the comic. So it's a running debate on this channel. So a very dead horse for another $4.99 says, no billionaires have billion in liquid assets. Exactly. That's the point that I'm making. Maybe a few million. Let me finish the super chat real quick. Maybe a few million. Also, most people live paycheck to paycheck due to fiscal irresponsibility, not lack of money. So go ahead. I'll just respond while you get your. I kind of lost my train of thought. Yeah.
I wanted to address, like, the reason I was saying about your audience leaning a little more right, it seems, and I think maybe that's incorrect to say, because you seem to agree that you have this skepticism of the government. This is a very right-wing concept that the government's the bad guy. This goes deep in the right wing.
And
I don't know if your audience knows this. I grew up conservative, like evangelical, Tea Party, Rush Limbaugh 3 hours a day, until I was 28. So fairly late in my life, I was very evangelical, fundamentalist, conservative, the whole thing. Like, I understand that thinking and distrust of government, but nature abhors a vacuum. If you don't have government, what replaces it is going to be other power structures that you have less voice in.
I agree.
A government of, by, and for the people is the ideal.
Correct. Yes.
And the more you distrust government and try to fight government and like reduce its power in general, like, there's particulars where we can disagree, but in general, what you're doing is you're increasing power for the oligarchy. Like, when they cut taxes for the rich, that means the rich have more money to buy elections with.
Right. Well, I just, there's gerrymandering and stuff like that, which has kind of minimized our
government's pretty fucked, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, is my point. Like,
government
of, by, and for the people is the ideal. It's not that right now, but we need to work on fixing it. That's why we need my man Bernie Sanders to get money out of politics.
Government is a necessary evil. And
yes.
I think what they're skeptical of is that you want to give more power to that government, and power that is just unheard of that the government doesn't have now, because they have the power to limit how far you can go. They literally have the power to limit an individual citizen raising enough money to try to triple the human lifespan.
This isn't giving government more power, though. This is giving the people more power, and then the billionaires have less power, so they can't engage in rent seeking and buy our government, and we can have a government of by and for the people. Because when 1% of the country owns 40% of the wealth, and most of it's discretionary for them, while the rest of us live paycheck to paycheck, we don't have much real influence in the world, but they do. And that's the problem, and that's what we need to work on solving, because we can't have an effective democracy when there's people that are so fantastically wealthy they can drop $1 billion on an election and still have plenty left over.
I disagree with that. I do. The another book that I think you should look at, I think you should read Why Nations Fail and The Dictator's Handbook. And I think if you did that, and we did another stream, I think it would be a very different conversation.
I mean, you should look at the Wikipedia summary for Why Nations Fail, because I looked through the whole thing and I was like, this is awesome. This is awesome. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. And I was like, where's the part where I'm supposed to disagree with? Because I don't feel like this is supporting what you're talking about. It says here their major thesis is that economic prosperity depends above all on the inclusiveness of economic and political institutions. My proposed model is maximally inclusive.
Yes. Well, no, it's not, because you are limiting certain individuals' ability to.
This book is all about how power being consolidated in the hands of the few is the problem.
Right.
And now you're arguing for it by talking about let's not limit the freedom of the billionaires.
But you're setting the bar for power so low that you're actually risking creative destruction, which they talk about tremendously in the book. Creative destruction is the conversation that we're having now. They talk in the book, they cite several examples of people who were monarchs, who had absolute power, who stifled innovation because it would destabilize the society in ways that would threaten their power. So you're talking about limiting creative destruction, and that's
not at all.
Well, you are.
Market socialism, we still have the creative destruction. We just don't have a billionaire class that is engaged in rent seeking and rigging the system in their own benefit.
I am proposing
There's
technology.
Actually more creative destruction in my model, because we don't have monopolies and billionaires that can crowd out the competition by manipulating government, because we don't have billionaires.
You're limiting capital formation to the point where you cannot create. That's where you're limiting it.
No, we're still creating. You haven't shown that.
Well,
you can start companies. You have a massive incentive to do it. I'm just limiting the power aspect.
I know. I think my example stands.
Is about how powerful people rig the country to protect their own interests, and that limits creative destruction. And I'm saying, yes. Let's stop that.
You're talking about setting up a system where the government itself literally limits creative destruction.
Like in a very skeletal framework kind of way, because all it's doing is making it so the average person has more influence over their own life and workplace.
Right.
Like it's not giving more power to the government. It's giving less power to the billionaires and the oligarchs.
Right. The producers.
You could say that. I think we're the producers.
Right. Well, we're going to go round and round on this. This has been a fascinating conversation, Steve. You're bringing a lot to the table. I have some more super chats here.
It.
John A.
No, I like talking to you.
Yeah. John A. for $5 says, so do billionaires go to the gulag for having more money, or what?
No, they should just give up some of their ownership.
I'm looking.
I mean,
at you,
same
Steve.
thing.
Steve,
we went from feudalism to capitalism, and we had to take lands away from the landed gentry because they owned everything. We took it away from them.
Don't talk shit about my bro Elon. Okay, seriously.
I mean, in the feudal system, the king owned everything, and the lords kind of.
That's not the system we have.
I'm just saying, if you think it's a problem to take land away from people who own it, that's how capitalism started. We had to take land away from the feudal lords and the kings.
Yes.
So I don't see how can you make an ethical argument that that's a bad thing when we've already done it and said that's a good thing.
That's a little trick of history there.
No, that's an ethical argument. It's a perfectly fair comparison.
Yeah.
We've already done it. We've already taken lands away.
I don't want to go down this path, because the next thing I predict it's going to be, colonialism. We stole this land from the Native Americans. I don't want to go down
more
this
super
path,
chats
okay?
and stuff. Just want to say I love having these conversations. I'm not watching chat. I'm trying to have a conversation with Adam here.
Yeah,
but I love
yeah.
talking to everybody, and everybody can follow me on Twitter at Rivera Life and then DM me. I'll probably talk to you. Like, I have a tiny little channel. It's never going to replace my income. It's like we just broke 100 subscribers. Yay me. But I'm glad to talk to everybody. So if you want to have a conversation, I'm glad to talk to you.
Yeah, and I'll put your info.
I'm not engaging in regular chat, but I'd be glad to talk to you personally.
Yeah, I'll put your information. I'll put your contact information in the description. I didn't because I was running late today. But
no worries.
Mad Robot added me, and he says very clearly what I'm trying to articulate here. So I'll just read it. Do rich people have the power to throw you in jail, to execute you, to steal your money, to sterilize you? The government does. So that's an issue as well.
The government has a monopoly of force, and we agree that that's a necessary thing.
Right, but you're talking about giving the government a massive amount of more power and taking that power directly from the guy who is trying to triple the human lifespan.
The one token good billionaire.
Let's not look at the
21.99 others that are killing us.
You keep saying that. You keep saying that, but it's a whataboutism. It's a whataboutism. It's so whataboutism. I'm saying that we need that guy. You have to take the good with the bad, and all you want to do is say, "But what about the bad? But what about the bad?"
Well, yeah,
but you're not addressing the argument. You're not addressing.
You're talking about this one
argument.
ISIS recruiter you met, who's a really cool guy, and I'm looking at all the people.
Dude, are you comparing Elon Musk?
Yes.
I might have to kick you off here.
No, I said Elon Musk is the one good guy.
Right. Okay, I thought you were calling him an ISIS recruiter.
If we're talking about a group of people and most of them are bad, that's relevant to the discussion.
Yeah. I think if you dig in, those people are not necessarily bad. And Mad Robot's argument still stands. The government is a check on those people. Those people aren't allowed to throw you in jail, execute you, steal your money, or sterilize you.
Well, they are stealing our money, and they're rigging the system in their favor so they can continue to grow faster and faster.
Right.
The wealth inequality gap's getting worse and worse.
Yeah, but it was my choice.
They have more and more
They're not stealing my money. It was my choice to buy all that weed.
But they're rigging the rules, so we don't really have a choice. You have the choice of being ripped off by these people or by these people. You don't have a choice of owning where you work or having a say in it. In most cases, you do.
Well, you have a say to work someplace else. Bob B for $5 says, "How do you curb rent-seeking behavior by just increasing the amount of money and power that you give to the government? Like, why isn't the government going to be the ones rent-seeking?" Which you see that all the time.
Because we're creating a government of, by, and for the people, which we have a pretty good framework for. We need to have some improvements. We need to fix gerrymandering. We need to fix money in politics. Yeah. We need a ranked choice voting system, so it's not a two-party system anymore.
Oh, God. Like I would kill for ranked voting.
Yeah, I'm sure you would. I mean, that's in Yang's platform, so I'm sure you agree. But those are like three things that are massively necessary to do. So yes, we need to make the government more accountable and transparent to us, but we can do that. How much influence do you have on how the last Koch brother, whatever his name is, spends his money?
You're baiting and switching here because I'm talking about how we need the Elon Musk, and you're saying, well, but we don't need the Koch brothers. I might agree with you that we don't need the Koch brothers, but you're saying we have to get rid of both. That's the issue.
There's a lot more of the Koch brothers.
And the argument still stands.
Statistically. I can prove this statistically. There's a lot of studies into oligarchy and the influence of the wealthy and how they lean very conservative and they halt things like climate change.
Yeah.
So we know the majority of billionaires and their influence is for the negative. This is a known, demonstrable fact. And you're trying to counter this fact with the one billionaire you like. And I don't think that's valid.
I've got a bundle.
So yes,
here.
I'm going to keep bringing it up.
I've got a bundle here. Okay. It's one person that's working on tripling the human lifespan and 25 shoplifters, okay? And you're saying we got to get rid of all of them. And I'm saying, wait a second, maybe we should put up with 25 shoplifters to get the...
Like, what do they have in common? That's a bad analogy.
Well, I'm just saying, it's my bundle, it's my hypothetical. I can make it however I want.
I mean, I don't want to give you too much crap because it's an off-the-cuff analogy, but that's a crap analogy.
Well,
like there's nothing in common between these people.
Well,
we're talking about the billionaire class, and they have massive power in common.
Right. Well,
but shoplifters don't have power in common with the guy trying to change.
But shoplifting is a problem, though. I'm just saying. You're saying these billionaires all create problems for society, and I'm saying, yes, shoplifters create problems for society too.
Yeah, but the shoplifters aren't billionaires typically.
I think
so. bad analogy.
Well,
we're talking about people with massive power.
Okay, I don't think you fully understand the analogy, but
I do.
Mad Robot for says again, every billionaire is making money by helping people. Do we want an online marketplace where you can order almost anything and have it delivered the next day? I think that's a shout out to our friend Bezos.
Sure. And we don't need these people to own our political system and make us take away our voice in our own government in order for those things to happen.
Yeah, but
we can have all this innovation. We can have these companies. Jeff Bezos doesn't do this. This is an incredible, Vosh brought this point up, and it's true. None of these people do this by themselves. They have engineers and teams and people, and the government can do a lot of stuff on its own too. So if you're looking at long-term innovative projects, we know they can do that. They already do, and they already have throughout history. Long-term innovation usually does come through the government. Because one billionaire might want to target
just because it has in the past doesn't mean that it's going to in the future. Just because it has, just because there was a point in time when that happened because there were external forces pushing us in that direction doesn't mean that it's ever going to happen again. Right now, the free market has taken over.
What billionaires have made life better for people?
Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk.
He created a company.
Branson, when I get to go to space for the first time. They
created a company, but they didn't do everything in the company. We're talking about with their power and their wealth.
Well, they organized it.
They didn't create a company without it.
They organized it. They were the linchpin. They were the
and they should make a lot of money for that.
Yeah,
they don't need to own our political system and most of our country.
Well, I think you're putting a lot of faith in the argument that money corrupts politics. That these billionaires have that kind of power. And I do. I don't think they do.
Core issue.
I think
that's the biggest issue on the planet today.
I don't think they do. If so, why is Donald Trump president? Hillary Clinton had way more assets at her disposal. Way more.
Because you're looking at a very narrow slice of the pie. You're looking at political contributions. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at the decades and decades, even centuries, depending on what you're looking at, of influence by the oligarch class. How they own the media, the pundits. The Fox News, Rupert Murdoch.
But we have people on both sides of that debate, though.
But they're all agreeing on things that benefit billionaires.
Sheldon Adelson.
The liberal mainstream media is not leftist whatsoever. They oppose leftism as much as Fox does.
But you can't tell me. You can't tell me the CEO of Apple agrees with Sheldon Adelson. They're both on
but they agree that they both want to pay less taxes. Most billionaires agree they want to pay less taxes, and that means
why do they want to pay entitlements? Why do they want to pay less taxes?
So that they can have more money, so that they can have more power.
To do what?
Whatever they want.
To triple the human lifespan.
Yeah, two people that you can think of versus 2,200 that are lobbying government to prevent us from doing anything about climate change.
To build Disneyland on the moon.
Yeah, the one guy.
No, there's lots of them. Daniel De La O for $5 says, the people are not virtuous because they are the people. Because they are the people. The government is the reflection of the people. Oh God. I'm terrible at super chats. The people, in quotes, are not virtuous because they are the people. The government is the reflection of the people. Yeah, and that's the way it should be.
Yeah, if I'm understanding that correctly, yes. It should be a government of, by, and for the people. That's the ideal. That's what we want.
A check on power. Which, I think let me try to boil down our disagreement here. I think that I'm seeing that billionaire class as the super innovators that are working towards just amazing things that will help people. I believe there's a government in place that prevents them from doing bad things. And you think that really all they're working on is bad things. You think that
not all, but I think their net influence is certainly for the bad,
right?
By far.
And what maybe we can dig in a little on what why you think that, and what the bad influence is, what the bad
Sure.
things
Have
is.
you seen the study? Like, it's public knowledge now. This is what I'm talking about here is fact that Exxon knew in the 70s that CO2 was causing climate change.
This
They
climate
predicted
change thing, it's like a bone.
it's kind of important. If you disagree, that we should talk about that because it's pretty important. They knew and they predicted current CO2 in the atmosphere and temperatures like this year, like almost exactly. They had models so accurate, and yet they funded climate denial for decades. They exerted their influence on the media, and not just Exxon, but basically all fossil fuel companies, the Koch brothers, etc. Like they produce so much power not only through political contributions, but also through buying ads, and also through owning media outlets, and also through funding pundits, and also through funding think tanks. Like they have this whole network, this labyrinth of power, which is why the people like Donald Trump don't need as many political contributions, because they've already exerted so much influence on the populace that's diluted them against their own best interests that they don't even need to give him more money.
So doesn't this boil down to an environmentalist argument that you're basically making? You're saying if we have billionaires, they're going to destroy the environment.
This is one argument. I think there's a lot of negative stuff billionaires do. They lean conservatives. That they want to. They don't care if people.
What's the matter with conservatives?
Well, there's a lot. There's 500,000 people that sleep on the streets. There's 45,000 people a year die without healthcare in the richest country on earth. And there's a lot of problems with that. So
well, there are people that live on the
something
streets
we could
because
talk
they
about.
Want to. So
don't think
you can't force them into housing. So anyway, no, Mad Robot has another amazing makes another amazing point. Does he really want? Does he really think we're not voting in our own interest? We're all just being bought and influenced by billionaires? That's a great question.
A lot of people are obviously influenced. I mean, think about this logically. You and I both agree that there is this thing called truth.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this principle of logic called the law of contradiction. If two positions contradict each other, one or both of them is wrong. Like that's truth.
Correct.
So we have a right wing and a left wing that contradicts on virtually everything. We know one or both of them is wrong. So no matter how you slice it, virtually everybody agrees that half the country is deluded against their own best interest.
Yeah, I disagree. I think both sides are fighting for their own interests, but their interests diverge. Like if you're a wealthy person with money in the bank, you're obviously going to want lower taxes. If you're a person who has no assets, no money in the bank, you're obviously going to want social programs. So I mean, and politicians are responding to these two classes of people by just trying to get them what they desire.
Right, but the top 50% of the country is not the top 1%. It seems like there's some conflation going on here. The bottom 2/3 of the country lives paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
The bottom 80% owns like 10% of the 2% of the wealth. It's like really low. So I'm more than happy to make a logical argument to anybody in more depth. I should have asked how much time we have.
We're wrapping up. We'll go for like another 5-10 minutes.
Okay. Well, I'd be glad to. I wanted to go into Bernie v. Yang more. Maybe we can have another discussion. But I'm glad to go in depth. I think I can demonstrate methodologically that Bernie is the best person to vote for anyone who isn't literally in the top 1% for wealth.
Okay.
John, it's not just the bottom 50%.
John A. for $5 says, this guy argues against one oligarchy and argues for another. Communist oligarchies are the most inhumane and despotic governments in human history.
Yeah, because you're looking at authoritarian states. You're not looking at a libertarian, democratic, socialist state. I mean, it's nothing similar. I'm not advocating for the Soviet Union here. Nobody is. Nobody's advocating for Venezuela. It's wild to me. I'm sure you've seen the meme. It's the chopper meme where the two guys are arguing with each other.
Yeah.
And the one guy says, socialism is a good thing or whatever. Another guy goes, well, what about? You've seen the meme, and he's like, well, so I just want to be like Norway. And the other guy's like, well, that's a capitalist country with social welfare. And he's like, well, let's do those policies, Another guy says, well, that's socialism. It's a circular reasoning here.
Why?
We want to be like Norway. So to be clear, I'm not in favor of doing dramatic change on one of the biggest economies in the world that's not tested. Like, we need to test things at a smaller scale. So that's why I support Bernie Sanders. Every one of his policies has been well tested. Like, we're just trying to be like Norway and Denmark and Germany and UK and Canada and New Zealand and blah, blah, blah. There's freaking 20 developed countries that have tested these policies and they work.
Why do you think the Stalin situation happens, though?
Well, for a lot of reasons. For one, for certain, the U.S. and the West in general crushes every attempt at getting away from capitalism. Like, this is on the record. Just Google U.S. regime change. The Wikipedia article has like pages and pages and pages and pages and pages of demonstrated on the record instances of the U.S. trying to do regime change. And we're not typically doing it to promote democracy. We support 73% of the world's dictatorships.
So you think your argument is the U.S. did it? Let me lay out my argument.
We have an influence on it. So I'm not talking about necessarily the Soviet Union, but all the like banana republics. You know, we did regime change in Iran because they nationalized their oil, which is a socialist thing to do. We didn't nationalize Norway for some reason. They nationalized their oil, and they're probably the most socialist country I would point to that's the closest to what we would want. And they're also the fiscally healthiest country on earth for developed countries. They are a net lender. Just if you're fiscally conservative, you should consider that.
I know I'm going to get the charge of state capitalism in this argument that I want to make. So why don't you go ahead and lay out what state capitalism is, just for the audience?
State capitalism?
Yeah. Because in the USSR, a lot of people say that wasn't real socialism. That was state capitalism.
Yeah, it's an authoritarian state. Like, the problems with the Soviet Union was in the government. Like, it wasn't a government of, by, and for the people. It was a handful of people that had power to dictate every aspect of everybody else's life.
Right, an oligarch. So what they sometimes say is that it wasn't real socialism because the state basically took out the managers of the industry and put their own political appointees in charge of the industries. And it was still capitalism, but being run by the same kind of billionaire class in any other capitalist system. That's what they call state capitalism.
Yeah, it's an oligarchy, sure. Like, obvious. I mean, it's well reported how much corruption there is, and that there's a lot of problems with an authoritarian state. That's why you want a government of, by, and for the people, and that's super duper.
But this is why I think that what you're proposing always devolves into totalitarianism. I just want to lay out my argument, okay?
Norway is one of the freest places on earth. So if you're only looking at the bad examples, we got to look at the good. We got to look at the Norway.
Well, and we're talking about the transition. So obviously Norway did it slowly over time. In Russia, it came, with bayonets. So
I'm seeing. I need to stop looking at Jack. There's a lot of stuff I'd like to talk to, but let me just again say, if you have anything to say, you can say it to me and DM me on Twitter, and we can talk about it, because we can't address all that.
So in these, when the transition comes through conflict, I believe the people that come to power make these socialist offers. Like, you're going to control part of your workplace. You're going to have a bigger say in society, right? You're going to have more money. We're taking the money from the rich and we're giving it to the poor. And that is a effective rallying cry to people. But as soon as they take over the government, they realize that what they want to implement is physically impossible. These co-op things don't necessarily work. And I think they install these government managers just simply out of necessity, because they're either their co-op system doesn't work, or they never.
I mean, you're making an argument that either A, you shouldn't do it through revolution, because a revolution necessarily gives the people leading it too much power.
Yes.
And they can keep that power.
And they do
Or
keep
that you shouldn't
power.
do it too quickly, because when you try to do it too quickly, it's going to fuck everything up. I agree with both of those things.
So then it inevitably comes
I'm not
state
going to say a
capitalism.
revolution would always be bad. Like, there's a time and a place for revolution. We did it, 1776. I'm kind of glad we did. And why did we do that? Because we didn't feel represented by our government.
Civil War. We had to free the slaves.
Right now, we're not represented by our government either. So I guess that is why we need a political revolution. I don't think it's to the point of a
Well,
revolution.
I don't know if that transition can ever happen, because I think the co-ops are bullshit. I don't think they have a chance in hell of surviving. And immediately the people in power realize that if the economy doesn't work, they're no longer going to be in power. So they install political appointees and they continue under the system of capitalism, the system that actually works, because that's their only option to stay in power.
And you haven't, I mean, you're kind of just asserting that you haven't shown it. Like I'm still advocating for a market economy. There's still like, there's no reason it wouldn't work that you've demonstrated. Like we still have incentive for creation. We still have very wealthy people. We still have a market economy and competition. Like we still have all the good stuff from capitalism. We've just increased liberty and our ownership over our own labor and our voice in our workplace.
A very dead horse for another $4.99. I got to thank you. You sent me a bunch of super chats here. Conservatives statistically give more to charity, and that's not even including supporting churches and synagogues, which also feed and shelter the poor. So he's a shout out for conservatives. I think you, if you want to respond, you can, but I think you have a bad take on conservatives. So,
well, I sympathize with conservatives. I was one. Most of my family still is.
You sympathize with them. They don't want your sympathy, bro.
Yeah,
they want your respect.
Most of them need it. I'm sorry, but almost everything modern conservatives say and their policies are demonstrably harmful for the country as a whole.
Yeah, I disagree.
I'm glad to take them all on one at a time and discuss them.
Man,
But this is a broad topic. I can't just, obviously
maybe we'll
I disagree.
Do that. Maybe
I'm
we'll
not
do
a
that.
conservative.
Maybe we'll do that, because one of the reasons why I consider myself a disaffected liberal is because I see so much of this social justice crap, like proposing policies that are just detrimental
yes, I actually wanted
to society.
Ask you about this whole Comicsgate thing. So we're approaching a lot of topics here.
Let's save it. Let's save it.
I don't even understand what. I mean, I've tried to research Comicsgate, and I don't even really understand it, to be honest. But that's like your whole thing.
I don't know how.
Maybe we can have a different conversation.
Yeah, totally.
About that.
Yeah, you're obviously a smart guy, and I like talking to you. So, FD, everyone in the chat's gonna be like, "Smart, this guy's an idiot. What are you talking about, Adam?" He presents the other side of the argument, and he seems willing. I know he's doing a little bit of straw manning here. I'm not calling all of it out, but it seems like his heart is in the right place. Like he doesn't want to straw man you, which most of the people that I'm talking, like, I don't know that I believe Vaush is sincere in the least bit. I don't know that Vaush wants to get to the truth.
I think he does. I'm not going to talk for Vaush because he's not here, but certainly I want to get to the truth. And certainly I appreciate your good faith. That's why I'd be glad to have as many conversations as you want to. Because it is very important to try to steelman each other.
Yeah.
And try to understand it. And we're both trying to get to the same place. That's why we start with values. We both want to make the world a better place. And if what I'm going for, it would make it worse, then obviously I would want to know that and stop pushing for it.
It would be terrible. Why do you think I'm talking to you? I'm trying to talk you out of this madness. I'm trying to get
I think what you're pushing for ends up in a Mad Max of dystopia.
Oh my God.
There we
Listen
go.
to this. I don't know how to pronounce this name. It's FDD.
Elon Musk will have a beautiful place on Mars, but you'll be in the Mad Max dystopia down here.
I'm going to Mars. Are you kidding me? I'm going to Mars right after this conversation. I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to get there, but I'm going.
In your mind.
Fish stick, Fetish stick. I don't even know how to pronounce it. FDDCSJXK for $5 says the Soviet Union didn't advocate for the Soviet Union either. Here. That's right.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's obvious like this. There's been a lot of political experiences in experiments in history, and obviously a lot of them haven't worked, and we learn from that.
Yeah.
A lot of the criticisms of the Soviet Union are overblown propaganda. Like we've all heard, tens of millions or hundreds of millions people died from the Soviet Union, depending on who you ask. And I'm not here to defend the Soviet Union because they were an authoritarian state and there's no free speech and they threw people in gulags and all this bullshit that we don't want. But how often have you heard the fact that capitalism killed 1.8 billion people in India?
So maybe they had it coming. Come on. I don't know. We're winding down here. So I want to give you like the last 5 minutes here to make your pitch, because I know you're a big Bernie guy, And I actually voted, my audience is going to hate me, but I voted in the primary for Bernie Sanders, and I really thought he got screwed over by Hillary Clinton. So I've seen other people, like I've lost a lot of faith in Bernie over immigration, because I think immigration is something we need to be conscious of. And I think the far left is pitching a form of immigration for their own personal benefit, because they think it'll help them at the ballot box, but it's not necessarily good for the society. So, and I feel like Bernie Sanders has kind of kowtowed to them on immigration and the social justice stuff, which I can't get behind. So, but I'm going to go ahead. You have the floor.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. So, I mean, SJW stuff, I think, is broadly over talked about. There's a lot of grifters that talk about some random idiots on Twitter and pretend like that's a problem when they don't have political power. Like, I'm concerned about the people who have political power, the people who are in the Oval Office right now, the people who are in the Congress, people who have power, and everything the right's pushing for is pretty freaking bad. It's like SJW is like, so it's not even on my radar. Like, sure, I disagree with some of their takes, and a lot of them actually. In general, am I in favor of social justice? Of course I am. I hope you are. Mm-hmm. You're just talking about SJW gone
feminism
wrong.
Is cancer. Cancel culture is cancer.
Well,
the modern form of feminism. You agree
we want to make world better for everybody. So,
yeah, totally. And I feel like feminism.
You want like people to be equally treated under the law.
Yeah, that was achieved forever ago.
Okay, so
but
you agree with the values. You just disagree with how people are getting there. So that's not we could have a conversation about that.
I feel like we've
nearly
overshot.
As big a deal.
I feel like we've overshot
things like
the
money
mark.
in politics. Things like Medicare for all, things like free college for everybody, things like forgiving student loan debt. These are going to have a much more dramatic influence on our lives and the people we care about than immigration or SJW or any of this other stuff.
Yeah. Well, I think
single-payer healthcare costs less.
This was supposed
and covers
to be,
everybody.
I'm disagreeing with you a lot here. I'm just not saying anything because we're wrapping up. And this was going to be a pitch for Bernie Sanders, and it's kind of not been that. So.
Well, it is, because we're comparing Yang versus Bernie, mm-hmm. and your problems with him, and we can talk about it, but I don't think it's nearly as big an issue. Like right now, the big issue to me is that we pay literally double what most developed countries pay for healthcare, and we have worse effects. We're not even in the top 10 for best healthcare, according to most measures of healthcare systems. And yet we pay twice. That's the problem. Single-payer healthcare fixes that. It costs less. All the studies, there's been a meta-analysis recently. Literally every single study that looks at the cost of single-payer healthcare shows it costs less than what we currently pay, and it covers everybody. It's a right for every citizen. You just covered. You don't have to pay out of pocket. Like, I am well off. Like, this is my argument for the 99%. Like, I'm make a six-figure income. Nothing Bernie does helps me personally as an individual, mm-hmm. but I have a lot of family and loved ones and friends who don't have health care, mm-hmm. and I want them to, and that have student loan debt, that want free higher education. And speaking of higher education, there's another big one. A free higher education pays for itself if you look at the math, because people who get a college education earn more over their lifetimes, thus they pay more in taxes. It costs a little bit to get going, but once you have it, it pays for itself. It's actually an investment. Some studies show it pays 4 to 5 times more than its cost, and yet it makes the country a better place because we're all better educated, we were more productive, blah 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 blah, all the benefits of education. That's huge. Now, if you want to quibble about immigration, it's like how much, or should we have, and should we block it? Now, we should have a border, until we're a long ways away from being able to have open borders or anything close to that. I think everybody agrees with that, including all the Democrats. None of them are for open borders. They're just for not locking people up in concentration camps and splitting up families. That's all they're for. There's still a border. They're just not for making it a felony or a criminal offense to cross it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, what we're doing is we're weighing issues. Like, if you disagree with them on a couple things, that's cool. And I think Joe Rogan probably disagreed with him on a couple things. but he agrees with him on the big things like healthcare, like free college for all, like getting the money out of politics. And that's why Joe Rogan endorsed him, and that's why I do, and that's why I think you would. Now, if you want to talk about Yang, UBI is a good conversation. The way he does it is actually making life worse for some of the poor people. It's not helping any poor people. It's a giveaway to the middle class. It's temporary, and I think it ultimately just keeps power in the wrong hands. So as an example, like my big issue with it is if I'm a poor person relying on government housing and food stamps, I'm a single mother maybe, trying to make ends meet over here, I get the choice to opt into Yang's $1,000 or keep my current programs. If I make a bad decision and opt into the cash and then can't afford food for my kids, now they're hungry because of Yang's program. They're demonstrably harmed.
This is why
now a lot of them would do better off with it, but some of them would be harmed. None of them would have their life improved because it's a break-even program. You're not getting it on top of your current programs. If it was on top of the current programs for the poor, he'd be a strong second choice for me. Like that alone is a huge issue for me. And for the middle class, that's when the inflation and whatnot comes into it. And I think it's a temporary giveaway. I don't think it's a long-term benefit.
These people make bad decisions, bad financial decisions. That's why they're in this situation.
Right. And exactly. And if people make bad decisions, they're allowed to suffer for that to an extent, but their kids shouldn't. Like we should guarantee a minimum level of living for people just for their kids, because you don't know where the next Elon Musk is going to be born. He could be born to a poor single mother in the hood.
UBI is not going to get rid of poverty, because the people who are in poverty,
it's not going to do anything.
They're going to continue to make bad decisions. They're going to continue to make bad decisions.
Right. All I want is to make sure that the poor kids still get food and housing and an education, so they have an opportunity to not be poor.
I want to give that middle class. If their parents
do stupid things and never climb above that base level, that's on them. Let's have equal opportunity.
I want to give that middle class. I want to give that middle class a little boost on participating in the innovator class. So I'm for giving that money to the middle class. I think you focusing.
I think UBI is a good thing.
But you're focused on one problem, and I think it hurts your overall argument, because you're focused on the poor in a way that you're not going to change that situation. You can't change that situation, because
we can change it for poor kids and make sure they have food and housing and good education. That we can do. We can give them an opportunity. That's what we're trying to do.
They have an opportunity now. Are you kidding me?
Right. But if their parents can opt out of those protections.
The poor kids have more of an opportunity now than the middle class kids, which is totally unfair. Because if a poor kid wants to go to an Ivy League school, they're going to snap that kid up, because that's the ultimate marginalized person. It's the middle class kid that gets screwed.
True. Like, it depends on the poor kid, obviously. A lot of them don't have the benefit of a decent public education even. Public schools in poor areas are pretty terrible, and they should be better.
Caliph Jones for $2 asked, do you support school vouchers?
Depends on how they're used, because we need federal regulation of education, because when you don't, you have tax dollars going to Louisiana to teach kids that the Loch Ness Monster proves young earth creationism.
Wouldn't school vouchers, though, be a market system for schools that would be better, that would be more market forces than government forces?
As long as they're going to schools that are still regulated and have to teach things that we know are true.
Yes.
Then now I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with it. Like, it's something we can talk about. The problem is every conservative pushing for school vouchers, the whole reason they want it is so that Christian schools teaching creationism can get tax dollars. Like, that's the whole reason they want school vouchers. It's just a loophole to get tax dollars to brainwash kids with things that aren't true.
I don't know if I've read enough about it to have an informed opinion. But
look into it. Like, there's a lot of schools that are teaching some pretty cringe stuff, and they're private schools.
Well, there's a lot of public schools that are teaching some pretty cringe stuff with this trans, like gender 72 gender stuff.
Oh man, yeah, now you're going to bring up that whole issue.
No, this is
sex isn't gender. They're two different
I know.
things,
I have to go. I have to go anyway. But this has been a good conversation. It's been a lot of fun. I hope you guys liked it. Let me know in the comments below what you think. If you want Steve to come back on, let me know too, and we'll have another discussion. It seems like we could talk about just about anything.
I am an atheist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you
I'm an atheist, I'm a humanist.
Are you an anti-theist? Because I'm an atheist too, but I'm a pro-Christian atheist.
Yeah, I would certainly not pro-Christian.
Okay, so we could box about that next. Atheist versus anti-theist. Stay tuned.
Well, we'll see. I would have to carefully qualify that, because I think there are beneficial religions.
Okay.
And like the only sect I know of Christianity that doesn't seem clearly harmful is like a universalist type of sect.
Listen to this guy.
So
we'll box. We'll box.
There are beneficial parts of it, but believing false things generally is not beneficial. So I'll just say that.
All right. Well, take care, everyone, and we'll see you in the next video.
All right. Thanks, guys.